Thank you, Rabbi Cohen, honorable ambassadors and guests. Welcome to Chabad of the Upper East Side. It's really an honor for us to be able to host you today. You know, during World War II, in England, someone came out publicly and declared that Prime Minister Churchill, Winston Churchill, is the world's greatest fool. He was immediately arrested. And in Parliament, there was a whole uproar. What is this, a police state? We thought we're living in a democracy. One is not allowed to criticize the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister responded, Winston Churchill responded, he says, we didn't arrest him because he criticized the Prime Minister. We arrested him because he divulged a state secret in times of war. Everyone is looking for the secret. What is the secret? Well, by divine providence, tonight is Rosh Hashanah, it's the Jewish New Year. And the Jewish New Year, we celebrate not during the creation of the world, day one of creation. We celebrate it on day 6 of creation, the creation of man. Why? If we're thanking God for creation, we should have celebrated it on Saturday, day 1. But this is the secret. This is the gift that God gave us. What distinguishes man from the animal? The animal walks on all 4. An animal can go through its entire life and never once looks up to heaven. We were given the gift. We walk on 2. And we have the ability to look above. There's nothing stopping us from looking above. That's the difference between existence and life. Existence means just to continue my existence. I eat, I sleep, I expand my existence, I extend my existence. But that's not life. That's not living. Living, life is when you ask yourself the deep existential questions. You look up. What is this all about? Why am I here? What's my mission? What's my divine purpose? What's my godly purpose? What's it all about? We're the only ones in the universe who can wonder, who can think, who can ask the big questions. Where does that come from? That comes from our godly soul, because each and every one of us is created in the image of God. And that's why we can't just exist for the sake of existence. We have this inner existential angst that bothers us. And that's why the Jewish people blow the shofar. The shofar expresses that existential angst. It's not just about existing. There has to be some deeper meaning and deeper purpose. And this tells us that at the core and at the essence, we are essentially godly beings. We are not human beings that occasionally have a spiritual experience. We're essentially godly beings that have human experiences. Because the fact that this gnaws at us, and this bothers us, and this troubles us, and we question, and we think, and we wonder, and we seek, and we search, what does that tell us? That tells us that at our very core and our very essence, we are truly godly. And we see this universally. Take the sanctity of life. The sanctity of life, the holiness of life. It's universal. You know, the Enlightenment prided themselves that we are so enlightened that we know how to deal with death. We can deal with death with equanimity. It's part of life. If there's no death, there's no life. If there's no up, there's no down. If there's no right, there's no left. So it's all part of life. So I don't get excited about that. I can accept that. Versus the masses that cannot accept that. Comes the Torah and says, no. The masses are much wiser than all these so-called enlightened ones. The fact that universally we respond so strongly to death that it's a tragedy. Even though logically it should be the most logical thing in the world. It should be like you go to sleep at the end of the day. You live the life, you go to sleep. Everyone we know dies. Why is death such a tragedy? We can't make peace with death. Why can't we make peace with suffering? It's all part of life. If there's no suffering, there would be no meaning to joy. Why can't we make peace with evil? It's part of life. If there's no evil, there's no good. Where does this come from? Logically, it makes sense that we shouldn't get so excited and so rattled by death and tragedy and evil. But we do get rattled. 7 billion people. It cuts across all cultures, all people. It's a response that comes from our gut, that we know deep down in our essence. To us, God is not an abstraction. God is reality. There is nothing else. That is reality, and that is our core, and that is our essence. And because God is, and God is absolute, that's why we believe that there should be absolute good. We can't make peace with evil. There should be absolute joy. We can't make peace with tragedy. There should be absolute life. We can't make peace with death. It's something unnatural about death. There's something unnatural about evil. There's something unnatural about pain and suffering. And that is the correct response. You can't explain it rationally or logically, but yet in the deepest levels, universally, 7 billion people know this truth, live this truth. The reality that there is a truth, there's an absolute truth that unites us all. God is reality, period, for everyone, for all, for one and for all. And we see it expressed on the deepest and the simplest level. That simple core truth that we all feel and know so deeply. It's not just an abstract intellectual concept. And this is what unites us. That's why we celebrate Rosh Hashanah on the day of the creation of man. Because man has that ability, has that consciousness. We have a conscience. It's not just about eating, sleeping, money, power, fame, extending existence, expanding existence. It's about elevating ourselves, to lead, to connect with our inner core and our inner essence, to lead, to have a connection with godliness, that we should live with a sense of divine mission, a divine purpose. Every human being, God didn't create an extra human being in this world. Every human being plays an indispensable role in God's world. God needs every blade of grass. He needs everything that He created. And this is what Rabbi Cohen was discussing, the Noahide laws. This is what unifies us all. This is the divine, godly connection. It's the highest common denominator that unites us. It's not about dumbing everyone down and everything down to the lowest common denominator. It's about elevating ourselves, challenging ourselves, and elevating all nations of the world. And that's what the UN really symbolizes. It should be a challenge that demands and asks us to exceed our expectations, individually and collectively, to live up to our godly potential. Noah is being the ultimate role model for all human beings. Noah was heroic. Noah, by the way, was non-Jewish. And he was heroic. He single-handedly saved the world. And he was a prophet. And God spoke to Noah. And every human being is a descendant of Noah. And he lived by the 7, him and his family, entire family, lived by the 7 Noahide laws, by the moral, ethical, eternal, and spiritual codes, despite the fact that the world around them was hopelessly corrupt, hopelessly decadent. If you look in the world, in the New Guinness Book of World Records, you'll see under the world's worst salesman, you'll see the name Noah. Because he built the ark for 120 years, and he didn't make a single sale. The only one he convinced was himself and his family. That's all he saved. He couldn't reach anyone. Because the world was so hopelessly decadent, so hopelessly corrupt, he was talking to the walls. And yet, look how heroic Noah was. He wasn't influenced. He wasn't affected. He had the courage of his conviction. He followed his conscience. He didn't just conform. He didn't follow the easy path. He did the right thing. And that's why not only was he saved, but he is the ancestor of every human being that's alive today. This is our role model. So this is the challenge on Rosh Hashanah and the opening of the UN, that we should challenge ourselves, challenge our families, our loved ones, challenge our friends, our neighbors, and nations should challenge themselves to live up, to elevate themselves, to live up to this divine ideal. We should all live a life that's connected, a life that's connected with the divine, with Hashem, with God, and united. This will usher in the Messianic Era, a time of real peace, real people. It's not in heaven, it's right here. It's now. It's you and I, all of us, by being in touch with our divine core and essence. I just want to bless you. It's a new year. Each and every one of you should be blessed with a happy, healthy, prosperous new year. Thank you.
If anyone has a few questions, anyone want to? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Hello, my name is
Sure.
My name is Stefan. I am the media director of the ICT. Well, first of all, I would like to say, for example, I am not a believer, but I respect the belief, of course. It's how it should be. My mother, for example, is, highly Christian. But I have a question for you about what you said. I agree with you what you say at the beginning, but I am a very curious person, and I read the Bible when I was a child just because I was in a Catholic school. And I have a question for you. You say, that we have to make peace with God, not with the devil. Of course. But I will ask you, how do you think it fits what you say now? Regarding that, if you read the Bible, you realize that more people were killed by God, even entire cities, than the devil.
Okay.
This is-
You want to turn this into a
Very-
theological discussion, debate?
Take it.
Take the flood, for example. It wasn't a punishment, it was like a consequence. Nothing could exist in God's world. If it doesn't have a godly spark, it can't exist. When the world becomes 100% evil, it self-destructs. It's like Hitler's 1,000-year Reich. Lasted too long, but thank God, after 12 years, it was gone for history forever. Such evil. When a society becomes monstrous and evil, not a drop of kindness, compassion, goodness, selflessness, kindness, just absolute evil. It can't exist in God's world. Because nothing could exist without God if it doesn't have that godly spark. There has to be a little good. Even in junk food, there has to be a little 1% of something genuine buried there inside. If it's 100% poison and it becomes 100% toxic, it can't survive in God's world. It wasn't so much a punishment, it was more like a consequence. It's not that God is punishing us. We can't survive. It's like if you pull the plug, from the source, there's no electricity, there's no life, you're pulling the plug. It's suicide. When we act immoral, it's suicide in every sense of the word, spiritually and physically. The physical was just a symptom of the spiritual suicide. We can't live without that connection. No human being can truly live, truly be alive, unless we really have that connection. And when we do have that connection, we are blessed. Life thrives, life flourishes, and this world is a Garden of Eden. When God created the world, this world was a Garden of Eden. That is the true nature of the world. And we all experience that because we were all children once. Children are innocent and pure. It lasts for a day and a half. And then we tell our first lie, and then we become alienated from ourselves, like being expelled from the Garden of Eden. But why do we start out life that way? Because that is our foundation. That remains our foundation. That is who we really are, that purity, that innocence, that child, not childish, you can't go back to being a child, but that childlike innocence. All the great geniuses of the world throughout history, they never lost that childlike innocence. Because they kept on asking the questions and wondering. They were in wonder of God's world and kept on asking all the questions that everyone took for granted. So that's what the challenge is. Never always be in touch with that childlike innocence and purity, because that's who we really are. Everything else is just an alienation.
Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to, my name is Katrin Auge, I'm from Norway. I'm with the ICT in Berlin as a master's student. I'd like to revisit the topic of this talk today about the role of religious leaders in
Combating
extremism.
Okay.
And I would like, as religious leaders, are religious leaders from different faiths, are they doing enough?
Okay, you can add also. Essentially, Torah was given for peace, and someone that uses religion, or number one, let's start off with the positive. Religious leaders have the responsibility to build peaceful societies, to love thy neighbor, to realize that whether he's black, whether he's Chinese, whatever faith or culture he comes from, that everyone is a child of God, and whether he's a member of his society or not, or his congregation, you should respect him. Because at the end of the day, are they doing enough? Listen, the Jewish people, unfortunately, have been through many trials and tribulations throughout the ordeal of of the last 2,000 millennium, and we've sort of become introverted. So we haven't really, but the Torah is really about peace and about promoting this message to all people. And if they say had the Jewish people taught about the 7 laws of Noah in Nazi Germany, the Holocaust wouldn't have happened. Of course, people would have felt a conscience to not just to march their neighbors into the gas chambers. But being that today, in 2017, and as we approach the new year, every single rabbi, priest, imam has the responsibility and to live, like the Rabbi Krasnianski was saying, if you're living for a higher being, then how do you kill? How do you kill? And in the name of God, it's basically misuse of God's name, and you basically misuse of power. So anyone who preaches killing, whether it's in a church, mosque, or synagogue, is not speaking in the name of God. Period. And number 2 is that they should be speaking about brotherly love and respecting all people as the nations. Again, you cannot change the difference of people's faces and people's ideals. God created a collage of people, different faces, but He wants us all to come together as one. Sure. No. Okay. So, one second. You want to add? You can sit. Wait a second. Sit.
My name is Ghazi Monir Ahmed. I am coming from Denmark.
Right.
You are talking about the peace of Jews and but what we are seeing about the Israel and Palestine in last maybe 50 years. The innocent body killed every day.
Okay.
And what kinds of initiative and you
Okay.
take it?
Okay. Number 1, that's a political. Israel and Palestine is politics. It's not. It has nothing to do with religion. In other words, it's even though I'm going to say this, that the reason why the Jewish people are in the land of Israel and why it's holy is because God gave it to the Jewish people. Everyone's welcome to live there, but at the end of the day, it was given by God, as it says in the first paragraph of the Bible, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz, that God created the heaven and the earth. So He gave it to the Jewish people. What's going on in Palestine? I don't want to go into political over here, but there's but basically, essentially, it's a holy place, and so on. I have one more question. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Introduce yourself. You don't have to stand up.
Okay.
Oh, you want to?
It's okay. No,
Yeah.
I just introduction. My name is Shoaib Ahmed. I'm the founder principal of Markaz Ulum Islamic School in London.
Right.
But it is there. I listen. You're talking. It's good. Very good. Is because we must connecting the God.
Right.
Then we are peaceful. The world and the peaceful yourself. Everyone. But without connecting the God, you can't do anything. It is our Quran say you're religious, every religious. But my question is, what is our role? The religious leaders. But is the important issue now? The extreme people like this. Islam don't allow the extreme. But what happening is, Brother Monir says, happening the innocent people. What is your rule? What is the Jewish people? If I say something is now a political issue, not politics. We are talking about humanity.
Yes.
What is we condemn this humanity?
Well,
those people as killing is innocent people.
Right,
we say
right.
every religious is condemned.
Right.
This is my question.
So
What is our rule?
So if just very that's a very valid question. Firstly, just to start with your question, the way to God is through people. Someone says, I love God, but I use God to hurt people, then I'm not speaking in the name of God. The test if a person really has faith, it's easy to say I have faith. How do I know if a person truly has faith? It's how you deal with your fellow man, because God works through people. So a person cannot hide fanaticism behind religion and say, in the name of God, I'm going to harm and hurt. Then it's not God. Then you're on some ego trip. It's delusional. If God is involved, if there's selflessness and egolessness and genuineness and humbleness, humility involved, then you approach everyone with humility, you approach everyone with humbleness. Now, the same God that said, thou shalt not murder and thou shalt not kill, it's one of the 7 Noahide laws,
Right.
because life is sacred, so too, if someone abuses that life, because the whole foundation of the Torah, the whole foundation of Judaism is that life is a privilege. I know we're Americans and we have rights, but in Judaism we have no rights. All we have are privileges. God doesn't know us a thing. He gives us existence, He gives us life, He gives us success. Whatever we have, we're grateful and we're thankful. The first thing we Jews do when we wake up in the morning, as soon as we wake up, we say, thank you, God. Thank you for giving me life. We're constantly thanking. We make blessings, 100 blessings a day. Constantly, every move, everything that we do, we can't thank God enough. He doesn't know us a thing. And that's the whole premise and the whole foundation of Torah, of a Jewish approach to life. So the life is a privilege. Life is not a right, it's a privilege. Therefore, the Torah says, if someone uses life to harm another person, if you see someone down the street, you walk out of here and you see someone chasing someone down the street with a knife, you have an obligation to stop the pursuer, to stop the murderer. Because that person has lost his privilege for life. You're using this gift that God gave you to harm other people, to abuse another person, to harm another person. At that moment, you have lost your privilege, and everyone, you can't just be a spectator, you can't just be a bystander. Everyone has to get involved, and if you stand by and do nothing, you become a murderer, because you're just sitting there and allowing this murderer to get away with murder. If you believe in the sanctity of life, you have to fight for the sanctity of life. Ferociously, in World War II, we fought for the sanctity of life. And we killed for the sanctity of life. Because anyone who has dedicated his life to harm other people, it's like a tumor. What's the compassionate thing to do with a tumor?
To kill it.
You have to kill it. Because if you have mercy on this tumor, one cell on this tumor is going to metastasize and it's going to turn into, it's going to suicide.
You want to ask one more question? Yeah. Okay, one question and we'll wrap it up.
Okay, my name is Dr. Sabir Michael. I come from Pakistan and proudly say that I'm a Catholic but raised in a Muslim society as a Muslim, I must say. The question from the second speaker, I want your comment on my assumptional statement. Religion divides, but culture unites.
Religion divides?
But culture unites the people.
Okay.
The culture unites the people. I want your comments. What do you think about it?
Okay.
The second thing, I want to ask you that we were talking about the cultural diplomacy in the United Nations, but I want to learn from you what the religious leaders can do to strengthen the role of the United Nations in different parts of the world. When we see that because of the political failure of the United Nations, there is a huge amount of distrust and mistrust among the people in the different parts of the country. And the third question, how the religious leaders can work out with the politicians to keep the politics away from the religion. Because we have seen where the politicians, either in a Catholic tradition, in a Protestant tradition, in Islamic traditions, where they have brought in the politics, the religion has been misused to use the power or to manipulate the ideas. So I would like to have the brief comments on these three items.
You want to answer the first part, I'll answer the other two?
Sure. It's a very, very excellent question. Thank you. Actually, you don't have to look far. The worst human tragedy that ever happened in history, World War II. Where did that start? That started in the seat of university and in the seat of the revolution, the secular revolution. Hitler said, ideas have consequences. So he says, evolution, survival of the fittest. Why is that only true in the jungle? The same should be true amongst human beings. So he believed This was his morality. This became a moral cause. To be cruel, vicious, violent in the name of survival of the fittest. We have to exterminate anyone who's not superior. Look at England, the United States. It was also a revolution. But there was a revolution that was touched with the God, with the divine. They never experienced any of it. So the religious leaders have a tremendous responsibility. Because it's only when you really are connected, there's a humility, when there is something greater than all of us put together, when there's an acknowledgement of a truth, of something greater than all of us put together, then we have a chance to achieve unity. But when you throw God out of the picture, you end up with communism, Nazism. You end up with the worst tragedies that in human history. More people were murdered, 60 million, 70 million. Stalin murdered more Russians than Hitler. Because when you take God out of the picture, so we have an essential role to play to bring peace.
And just to add that the Secretary General, both the previous Ban Ki-moon and the current, stated clearly that religious leaders and political leaders have to work together. The idea is that religious leaders should realize it's not about membership, congregations. We have to realize that we have to unite the world and respect each other for who they are, and not try to. It's not about building your own membership. So, like the rabbi was saying over here, when religious leaders take a step back and say, well, it's not about me building Judaism or Islam or building my congregation or building a building. It's about realizing this: why am I here? Why am I serving the people? You're serving the people because of God. And if God is real and reality, then it shouldn't affect who you are or what religion, and you should respect. There should be a common thread, and this is the bridge. The universal laws of Noah. I've had both Christian scholars, Muslim, everyone could agree when we take a step back to Noah, we're all fine. And one of the laws is thou shalt not kill, abortion, which includes abortion. We can't agree on everything, but let's agree that life is sacred, and it's a privilege, and everyone has the right to live, because God created them. If God wanted someone to die, he would simply wouldn't wake up. He would give him a heart attack, whatever. His time would be up. But every person that's alive, he has a mission and has a purpose to fulfill, whether it's and regardless of religion. And the laws of Noah is that bridge to unite everyone. And the Secretary General said that, and we hope that we hope that Muslim scholars and Christian scholars and even non-believers all come together and realize that the laws of Noah are the very foundation, the very basis for all of us to live by. Thank you very much, and Shana Tova. Thank you very much. Shana Tova. Meet you here.